need to speed up our Bridgerton season 3 rewatch. This is going to be a long video, so if you're not ready to deep dive on episode 3, save this and come back to it later. Listen to me tomorrow while you're getting ready. Otherwise, settle in because we have a lot to talk about.
Kicking off episode 3, we are trying to show that Colin is having that mental switch.
Watching this just internally, going from that scene in episode 2 coming into episode 3, where you're like, okay, well, Colin's got feelings for her now. Probably had things underneath the surface for a while, but they've never actually talked about it, which is one of many problems for it. But also, I feel like as an audience member, because you're not already locked into his experience, you don't do that quick flip with him when we go into episode 3. You want to, you're kind of trying to, but I think the thing I saw a lot of people saying was it felt like he hadn't earned it. People who weren't necessarily already rooting for Colin and Penelope didn't feel like he had earned it because it felt like he didn't have much emotional risk going into it that we could very, 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 very clearly see.
We're immediately putting him in a dream sequence that fantasizes the sexualized side of this versus having that emotional experience. Somebody brought up in the comments that they think Colin is demisexual, and I don't think I ever knew to put that word with what it actually meant until they introduced it. And I can see how that would play out, but I think because his role is so familiar to us in a lot of ways, he is a bit more quirky. He is a bit more needy. He is not exactly the person that fits in this direct box. When we don't define him a little bit more clearly, we bring our assumptions into this a bit more, and it makes it challenging for us to see him as clear as we need to see him when we don't feel like we're getting clear, guided answers on the emotional side of things or the trauma and anything that's kind of lingering underneath.
Coming out of the dream sequence, Colin is very much shocked by the fact that he is suddenly having these feelings be so clear for her, because before they might have been kind of lingering, he can no longer escape them. The one thing that I really struggle with in this season, and I know that book viewers will have their own opinions of it, but for me it's just more of like a base levelness, is somebody who is supposed to be a writer. He should be the most verbally eloquent.
There should be more romance in his language, and we don't ever see it. As a writer, you get tired of using the same words, and you're always looking for how you can re-describe it. What are the other ways in? What are the other ways in which somebody might experience this? And the language for this show feels like it's not at the level that it should be for this season. I'm being so incredibly nitpicky with this. Skipping ahead to Penelope meeting in the park.
The scene has always bugged me a little bit, and I think it's because tonally it feels so different than any way we see him in any other episode. It's just a little bit too comedic.
We only ever really see Colin as funny when he's with his brothers and sisters, and I think that's what makes me feel so uncomfortable with this scene, because it's giving this awkward brother-sister dynamic. Like, they don't know how to be around each other. Makes me so uncomfortable, and obviously they're uncomfortable with each other. Don't know what it is. There's something about this scene that it's like nails on a chalkboard for me internally.
But also going under a tree, because they've talked about this in interviews that they found it and then I think they rebuilt it so that they could control the lighting or shoot it at a later point, whatever the case may be. How does that not look more suspicious than everything else? It looks even more sus when you just see somebody's legs under that tree. It doesn't go to the ground. People can still see what's happening. Is that not going to raise more suspicions, or does she just not care at this point? Or is she just like using her whistle down power to skip over this one? Because if I saw somebody's legs under a tree like that, I would have more questions than I had probably already had when we were just floating the rumors about all of this.
Now, for a second, I had some beef this first party scene because it feels like he turns away from the camera a little too much, and we're getting some of the emotion that we typically show on the side of his face that's away from what we get to see. I'm gonna come back to this at a later point, but it was something that kind of caught my eye as, is this something that's happening consistently, or is this just us adding to our throwaway moments? So we're walking everybody into what's going to be the balloon scene, and they established this a lot more in other seasons, is that Penelope often noticed Colin before he noticed her. He would come to her, he would seek her out, but she was obviously aware of where he was at all times, partly because she was clinging to the wall, but she's into him. And we're starting to see that flip. We've seen it at the beginning of the season when Colin's come back and he's like, okay, she's not paying attention to me anymore, but I'm noticing her. Between the party scene and coming into the scene, we're starting to see that the first thing that Colin and Penelope do is figure out where the other person is in whatever establishment. Now again, subtlety is out the window because clearly these two are making themselves even more noticeable, but we're starting to see that Colin is going to be following following Penelope everywhere. It's very much his turn to chase her, and that's simplistically displayed in the fact that he is always physically moving his body to wherever she is. She is always in his awareness, and he's either restricting himself from going after her, or he's finding ways to be near her. But the cupcake scene, without explicitly stating the stuff that we've talked about already, can lead us to that, oh, he physically desires her more. And it looks like there's not that emotional experience happening, but the cupcake scene really plays up the sexual desire for him a little bit more. I think without the conversations that we've already been happening, it's easy to dismiss this as something that's more physical than it is emotional, and having the conversations that we've been having helped me to see this more expansively.
I do love that with the cupcake moment, we get that, like, the closest thing that Colin can get to Penelope's lips right now is to eat the same sweets that she was just eating. But then we quickly have him put this mask back on, and we go through the sequence of things so quickly, you really have to like stop and give yourself a moment to read it, because he's still lingering with her. Then he goes into the conversation with these guys, try to save a little bit of this perception of himself, but also really focus on kind of pushing himself past this point, because there's nothing he can do about it.
In reality, it's been less than 24 hours since that kiss, and Colin is trying to process a lot very quickly while also not knowing how to like physically make himself be different. Somebody we know has already risked himself when it comes to love. It makes sense that he would want to take time to kind of think through how this would play out if he made these choices. And then suddenly we're in the balloon scene, and his space to kind of think things through a little bit more is being ripped away.
Every time Colin feels uncomfortable with something that he's seeing, he tends to purse his lip. And it is kind of a throwaway moment when we're listening to these men kind of chat about Lord Devlin, because obviously Colin is looking to understand who he might lose Penelope to. But as viewers, we're also kind of getting this moment where for that financially well off, you are acceptable. But of course, we flow into the sequence. Colin seeing everything happening with Devlin because he's got his eye on Penelope. He's so very aware something is about to threaten her. That obviously, every time we kind of add a layer to this, it's shifting how Colin feels emotionally, because we're watching him have to deal with his feelings in real time in a way that's almost forced. He goes from being able to deny them to illuminating everything because he's had that dream.
We're not giving him a lot of time to let the doubt take hold. We're really pushing him to the most extreme, to where he has to take action on this because there's no other option. It is fully going to be worth the risk. We're making him face the fear of everything that happens if he doesn't take that risk.
I think when we're going into this ball scene, kind of knowing everything before, you have to almost step in and clock it. You have to take a moment to kind of catch up with where is he at internally, because it's not as though he's putting on the face that he wants to be seen. It's almost that he's putting on the armor that we're going to talk about in the next episode. He's bracing himself for what he may have to watch unfold. But it's important in this season to stop and actually check in with Colin's emotional journey, because it's so easy for us to breeze past it. It's so easy for us to just feel like we're moving on, because there's so many moving pieces in this world, but specifically in this season.
Coming into that scene with Colin and Penelope is the second time this season that Lady Whistledown has completely ruined the episode. As an audience, we need to experience the moments that these characters are feeling vulnerable, and we need to sit in it with them. And so when you have the voiceover dialogue, it immediately takes you out. If you're watching at home and you've got text on the screen, you're suddenly reading things, you're hearing it instead of feeling it. It really takes away from the heart of the story that's being told, because we get that dialogue kind of going over this whole sequence of things. We know that we're going to have to pace it, so it changes the music, it changes all of the other tones of the things happening in the scene. We end it very beautifully. We get the shots that we need to get. We need to sit in the tension of what could potentially happen between these two. What she's starting to recognize is a vulnerability coming from him, and her trying to put her own names to the emotions of it. Him really sitting in that moment of what does it mean for him to actually take this step forward. It should be so much more stripped down than it is. I had a lot of beef with the writing on this show this season, and what it felt like behind the scenes was kind of coming through and how they were choosing to tell these stories. Part of me that sees these moments as ego driven. That being said, I am ending our season 3 episode 3 debrief. We will be continuing on with episode 4, so if you're interested, make sure you follow along. Love to hear from you guys in the comments, and I will see you again in the next video.